After Clifford grabbed my arm and shoved me into the doorframe, I stood there for a second with my hand pressed against the side of my head, feeling the blood start to come through my fingers. My grandson Danny was standing in the hallway. He was 9 years old and his face had gone completely white. That was the moment I knew I was done waiting. I am Howard Malone. I'm 67 years old. I built the house I'm about to tell you about with my own 2 hands on a lot I bought in Raleigh, North Carolina. Back when land out here was still something a working man could afford. My wife Gloria and I raised our daughter Nadine in that house. Gloria passed 8 years ago. After she was gone, that house was the only thing I had left of the life we built together. Her photo sits on the mantle above the fireplace. I never moved it. Not once. I want to tell you how I ended up standing in my own hallway bleeding. And more than that, I want to tell you how I got everything back. Nadine called me on a Tuesday night about 3 years ago. She said she and her husband Clifford Briggs were in a rough spot. He had lost his job at a logistics warehouse and they were 2 months behind on rent. Just until we get back on our feet, she said. Just a few months, Dad. We will help around the house and pay you something once Clifford finds work. I said yes. She is my daughter. That is what you do. They moved in the following weekend with Danny, who was 6 at the time. Good kid. Quiet, like Nadine used to be before she married Clifford. I gave them the guest bedroom down the hall. I kept my room, the one Gloria and I had shared for 31 years. I told myself this arrangement was temporary. The first sign I missed was small. Nadine started reorganizing the kitchen not long after they arrived, moved things around, said it was more practical for her. I let it go. A few weeks later, she said the guest bedroom was too cramped for 3 people. Could I maybe take the smaller room at the back of the house? Just for now. Just until things settled down. She said Danny needed space to grow, and that made sense to me, so I moved my clothes and my nightstand, and I told myself it was fine. What I did not tell myself was that the small back room had no closet, faced the water heater, and got about 2 hours of sunlight a day. I just packed my things and moved and did not say a word about it. Then Clifford started spending time in my workshop. I've got a good setup out there in the garage. Table saw, band saw, a full set of hand planes I collected over 40 years of weekends. Some of those tools belonged to my father. He was a finished carpenter in Virginia, and he taught me the trade when I was barely tall enough to see over the workbench. When he passed, I kept every one of his tools, kept them oiled, kept them sharp, kept them hanging in the same order he always used. I walked into the workshop one afternoon and found Clifford sitting in my work chair with his feet up on the workbench, talking on his phone. He looked up at me and held up one finger, like I was the one interrupting. I stood there in the doorway of my own workshop and waited for him to finish his call. I should have said something right then. I did not. Things kept shifting after that. Clifford's friends started showing up on weekends. They would fill up the living room, drink my beer, leave the kitchen a mess. Nadine's sisters came on Saturday afternoons and took over the back patio. My armchair, the one I had kept by the front window for 20 years, got moved into the hallway corner one day without anyone mentioning it. When I asked Nadine about it, she said they needed the space for Danny's things. I dragged the chair back to the window that evening. The next morning, it was in the hallway again. Danny stopped coming to find me. When I tried to take him outside to toss a ball or just sit on the porch, Nadine would call him back inside before we even got started. He would look at me over his shoulder with this expression I did not know how to read. I did not want to put him in the middle of whatever was building between me and his parents, so I started pulling back. I told myself I was protecting him. What I was actually doing was disappearing inside my own house. Month 4 came and went, and Clifford still had not found work. I knew because Nadine kept covering for him. The job market is rough right now, Dad. He is applying everywhere. He is doing his best. But I could see what he was doing with his days, and applying for jobs was not it. He slept until 11. He watched TV until midnight. He had started using my workshop as a place to sit and make phone calls, and the bench was getting cluttered with his junk. Then the bank statement arrived, and everything changed. I opened the bank statement the way I always do at the kitchen table with my morning coffee before anyone else in the house was awake. I went through it line by line the way my father taught me. He said a man who does not read his own statements deserves what happens to him. There was a personal loan on my account, $8,000 approved 6 weeks earlier. I had never applied for any loan. I rated again. Then I rated a third time. The money had been deposited and then transferred out to an account number I did not recognize, all within the same week. I sat there for a long time before I said anything to anyone. That evening, I asked Nadine about it in the kitchen while Clifford was in the living room watching television. She did not flinch. She told me I must have forgotten signing the paperwork. said it was for the roof repairs they had done back in the fall. I told her I knew exactly what I had and had not signed, and I had not signed anything for any loan. She looked at me with this patient expression, the kind you use on someone you think is not quite right in the head, and said I had probably just forgotten. That it happens. I was not confused, not even slightly. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went through my filing cabinet in the back room. My copies of the house deed were gone, my bank records from the past 2 years were gone, my social security card was gone. Someone had gone through my files carefully enough that nothing looked obviously disturbed, but the things that mattered were not there. I did not sleep much after that. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought about what I was dealing with. The next morning, I went out to the workshop to clear my head, same as I had done for 30 years whenever something was weighing on me. The smell of sawdust and machine oil had always been enough to settle my thinking, but I walked in and stopped in the doorway. Half my tools were gone. The full socket wrench set my father had given me when I opened my first shop, my 2 Stanley No forehand planes, the set of Lie-Nielsen bench chisels I had saved up for over the course of a year, the wooden mallet my father had made himself with his initials burned into the handle, all of it gone. The pegboard had empty hooks where those tools had hung for 2 decades. I stood there looking at those empty hooks for a long time. I found out later that Clifford had been listing everything on Facebook Marketplace. Sold a lot of it over about 3 weeks to cover gambling debts he had been running up online. He sold $2,400 worth of tools I had spent 40 years collecting, including things that had belonged to my father, things that had no real price because they could not be replaced. He sold them for whatever someone would pay fast, which was not much. I went back inside and told Nadine I needed to sit down with both of them. Clifford came in from the living room slowly, like a man who already knew what was coming and had decided he was not going to apologize for any of it. He stood with his arms crossed while I laid it out. The loan, the missing documents, the tools. He told me to calm down, said the tools were just sitting there and he had meant to tell me, said the loan was used for the house and that it benefited me too. His voice kept climbing as he talked, getting louder with each sentence like volume was going to make his argument more convincing. I told him I was going to call an attorney. That is when he moved. He stepped around the table and grabbed my arm and pushed me hard toward the doorway. I'm 67 years old and I'm not a small man, but I was not expecting it. I went sideways into the doorframe and the right side of my head caught the wood. I felt it split, not a deep cut, but head wounds, bleed fast, and it was bleeding. I straightened up and put my hand to my head. Danny was standing in the hallway. He had heard the voices and come to see what was happening. He stood there completely still, looking at the blood on my hand, and his face did something I will not forget. Nadine was behind Clifford. She did not move toward me. She looked at my head and then she looked at Clifford and then she said, "You provoked him, Dad. You know how he gets when he feels backed into a corner." I did not say anything back to either of them. There was nothing left to say in that moment that would have done any good. I turned and walked down the hall to the back room and closed the door behind me. I sat on the bed and pressed a folded undershirt against the cut, and I thought clearly for the first time in months, not about what had just happened, about what I had been quietly doing for the past 2 weeks before any of this came to a head, because I had not been sitting still. I had been preparing. About 2 weeks before the night Clifford shoved me, I had started making moves. It began the morning I found the first bank statement discrepancy, before I had even confirmed the loan was fraudulent. Something in my gut told me I needed to stop reacting and start thinking like a man with a plan, so I did. The first thing I did was call Virgil Sutton, my neighbor down the street. Virgil is 65, retired electrician, been on that street longer than I have. We fish together a few times a year, and he is the kind of man who does not waste words. I told him I needed him to hold some documents for me without asking questions. He said, "Fine, come by whenever." I went to the print shop on Glenwood Avenue on a Tuesday morning while Nadine and Clifford were both out. I made 3 copies of the house deed, which I had kept in a fireproof lockbox in the closet. I printed 6 months of bank statements from the library computer, so there was no record on any device in the house. I photographed every room with my phone, turning on every light, getting clear shots of the damage Clifford had done to the walls in the hallway, the water stain on the ceiling of the master bedroom they had taken over, the gouges in the hardwood floor from furniture they had dragged around without pads. I made sure every photo had a visible timestamp. I put everything in a manila envelope and dropped it at Virgil's that afternoon, told him to keep it somewhere safe and not mention it to anyone. He took the envelope without a word, nodded once, and that was that. The second thing I did was set up a camera in the workshop. I had a small motion-activated camera I had bought a few years back to watch the driveway at night after someone had knocked over my mailbox twice. I mounted it up in the corner of the workshop ceiling behind an old coffee can I had kept up there for years holding spare screws. It was pointed directly at the tool wall and the workbench. I turned it on and I let it run. Over the next 9 days, it recorded Clifford coming into the workshop 4 separate times. The first time he just looked around. The second time he took the socket wrench set off the pegboard, wrapped it in a shop rag, and walked out with it under his arm. The third and fourth times he took the hand planes and then the chisels. He never looked up at the corner of the ceiling. He never looked up at all. He just took what he wanted and left. I watched the footage each morning from my phone in the back room, with the door closed. I did not say a word to anyone. I just kept the recording saved in a cloud account I had set up on the library computer, linked to an email address Nadine and Clifford did not know about. By the time I confronted them about the loan and Clifford put his hands on me, I already had everything I needed. The deed copies at Virgil's, the bank records, the time-stamped photos of property damage, the video of Clifford committing theft on my own property in my own workshop across 4 separate days. So when I sat on that bed with the folded undershirt pressed against my head, I was not scared. I was ready. I waited until the house was quiet. It was close to 2 in the morning when I stopped hearing voices from the other end of the hall. I got up, pulled out the duffel bag I had packed 3 days earlier and kept pushed under the bed, and I checked it one more time, change of clothes. My blood pressure medication, the 1 copy of the deed I had kept back for myself, tucked into the inside pocket. $600 in cash I had pulled from the ATM in small amounts over the previous 2 weeks, and the phone with the cloud account that held every second of camera footage. I picked up Gloria's photo from the nightstand. I stood there for a moment looking at it, then I wrapped it in a flannel shirt and put it in the bag. I walked down the hallway slowly, past Danny's door. I stopped there. I wanted to go in. I wanted to tell him something, but I did not know what I would have said. And waking him up would have woken Nadine, and I was not going to give them the chance to block the door or talk me out of leaving. So I stood there for about 10 seconds, and then I kept walking. I went out the front door and pulled it shut behind me. The street was empty and quiet. The air was cool and smelled like cut grass from somewhere down the block. I walked to Virgil's house and knocked twice. His porch light came on. The door opened. He looked at the cut on my head, looked at the bag on my shoulder, and stepped back to let me in. His wife Sylvia was up by then. She sat me down at the kitchen table, cleaned the cut, and put a bandage on it without saying much. Then she made coffee and left Virgil and me alone to talk. I told him everything start to finish. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said one thing. You need to call Lorraine Pace first thing in the morning. Lorraine Pace had an office on the 3rd floor of an older building downtown, the kind with a slow elevator and floors that creaked when you walked. Virgil had connected me with her through a friend who had used her in an estate dispute a few years back. He called her himself that morning, explained the basics, and she agreed to see us at 10. She was about 51, short hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her desk had stacks of files on both sides, but she knew exactly where everything was. She did not waste time on small talk. She asked me to tell her everything, and I did. From the beginning, while she took notes on a yellow legal pad without looking up. When I finished, I put the envelope on her desk, the deed copies, the bank statements with the fraudulent loan flagged, the time-stamped photos of property damage. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the camera footage. Clifford on 4 separate days walking into my workshop and walking out with my tools under his arm. She watched the footage twice without saying anything, then she set the phone down and looked at me. She said I had a strong case. Fraud, forgery of signature, theft of personal property, and unlawful occupation of a residence. She said with the evidence I had, she could file for an emergency eviction order and there was a reasonable chance a judge would approve it within hours rather than days. I told her I wanted to move as fast as possible. She picked up her desk phone and started making calls. I sat across from her and drank the coffee her assistant brought in and listened to her work. She was efficient in the way that people get when they have done something for 20 years and stop needing to perform confidence because they actually have it. We were about an hour into the process when Virgil's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and turned it toward me without a word. It was a screenshot from the Nextdoor app. Nadine had posted that morning from my address. The post said, "Housewarming at the Briggs home this Saturday, friends and family welcome." She had used Clifford's last name. She had called my house the Briggs home and posted it publicly for the whole neighborhood to see. Then Virgil played me a voice clip his niece had recorded from 2 houses down. His niece had heard the noise from her front yard and hit record on her phone. The audio was clear enough. Music in the background, people talking, and then Nadine's voice coming through loud over all of it. "She's finally gone. We're free now." And then the sound of glasses hitting together and people cheering. 3 years of watching them take over my house, and they were toasting to it on a Saturday afternoon. In my backyard, using my patio furniture and my grill. I slid the phone across to Lorraine without saying anything. She watched it once, then picked up her desk phone again. An hour later, she had the emergency eviction order signed by Judge Tillman. She coordinated with 2 patrol officers and a woman named Patricia Owens from Child Protective Services, who came along because Danny was on the property and they wanted someone there specifically for him. We pulled up to the house at 6 in the evening. I could hear the music from half a block away. There were cars parked up and down both sides of the street, people in the backyard, the gate standing open, my grill going, my patio chairs spread out across the lawn like the place had always been theirs. Officer Grady knocked on the front door, 3 hard knocks. The music kept going for a few more seconds and then cut out, footsteps inside. The door opened and Clifford stood there with a beer in one hand and the beginning of a grin on his face that disappeared the moment he registered the uniforms behind Lorraine. She handed him the court order and explained it plainly. The property belonged to Howard Malone. He and his family were required to vacate immediately under an emergency order signed by Judge Tillman. They had 30 minutes to collect personal belongings. An officer would be present throughout. Clifford looked past Lorraine and found me standing on the front walk. His expression went through several things. I did not say anything. I just stood there. Nadine appeared at his shoulder. She saw the patrol cars at the curb. She saw me. She said this was a mistake, that this was their home, that we could not do this. Lorraine told her calmly that any threatening language would be documented and could be used in subsequent proceedings. Nadine stopped talking. The party guests cleared out in about 10 minutes. Nobody wants to be standing in someone's yard when police are at the front door. People grabbed their drinks and their bags and found reasons to be somewhere else. The backyard went from a party to an empty lawn in less time than it takes to tell it. Danny came out from the back hallway when he heard the commotion settle. He saw me standing just inside the doorway and he stopped. Then he crossed the room and I crouched down and put a hand on his shoulder and told him everything was going to be all right, that none of what was happening was his fault. He nodded but did not say anything. Patricia Owens stayed close to him for the rest of the time they were in the house. Clifford and Nadine took their 30 minutes. Officer Grady supervised while they packed. Clifford moved fast and did not make eye contact with anyone. He grabbed clothes, his laptop, a few things from the kitchen. Nadine carried Danny's backpack and a box of his toys. She was crying by the end, not the kind of crying that comes from regret, but the kind that comes from not getting what you wanted. She looked at me once before she walked out the door. I did not look away. They loaded into their car, the one parked in my driveway. Clifford backed out without looking. The taillights went down the street and turned the corner, and that was it. Officer Grady handed me the keys and told me to change the locks first thing in the morning, just in case copies had been made. I thanked him. Lorraine reviewed the final paperwork with me on the front porch and told me the eviction was temporary until the hearing in 2 weeks. But with the evidence we had, she did not expect a different outcome. She told me to document any attempt at unauthorized contact and to call her office if either of them showed up at the property. Then everyone left. Virgil offered to stay, but I told him I was fine. I needed to be in the house alone. I walked in through my own front door and stood in the living room for a moment. The remains of the party were everywhere. Plastic cups on the coffee table, beer bottles on the kitchen counter, paper plates with food still on them out on the back patio. My grill had been left on. I turned it off. The first thing I did was go to the mantel. Gloria's photo was still there. They had not touched it. I stood there looking at it for a while and then I got to work. I cleaned for 4 hours straight. Every cup, every bottle, every paper plate. I wiped down the counters and swept the kitchen floor and hauled 3 bags of trash out to the curb. I brought my armchair back from the hallway and put it by the front window where it had lived for 20 years. I went to the master bedroom and stripped the sheets off the bed and put them in a bag by the door. I put my own sheets on, the ones I had kept folded in a box in the back room. White cotton smelled like the cedar block I keep in the closet. I did not finish until nearly 2 in the morning. My back hurt and my knees hurt, and I did not care even a little. I slept in my own bed that night for the first time in over a year. The hearing 2 weeks later went the way Lorraine said it would. Clifford and Nadine showed up with an attorney who made arguments about home improvements and implied permission and contributions to household expenses. Lorraine put the camera footage on the screen. She walked the judge through the forged loan documents, the Nextdoor post with Clifford's last name on my address, the recorded audio of Nadine announcing they were free. The judge ruled in under 30 minutes. Eviction permanent. The fraud and theft charges referred to the district attorney's office. I walked out of that courthouse and stood in the parking lot in the sun for about a minute. Then I drove home. 3 months after the hearing, Patricia Owens called me. She said Danny was struggling. Nadine was working double shifts, and Clifford's legal situation meant he was not a stable presence. Danny had been asking about me. She wanted to know if I was willing to be evaluated as a temporary placement. I told her I would do whatever the process required. 6 weeks later, Danny came to stay with me. He showed up on a Saturday morning with a backpack and his baseball glove. First thing he asked was whether the workshop was still out there. I told him it was better than it had been in a long time. I had spent those 6 weeks putting it back together. Got the rubber mats out, unbolted the weight rack Clifford had screwed into my workbench, cleaned and oiled every surface. Lorraine's office had tracked the Facebook Marketplace listings and identified the man who had bought my father's tools. He had not known they were stolen. He sold them back to me for the $340 he had paid Clifford for the lot. I knew what they were worth, and he knew what they were worth, and he sold them back anyway because he was a decent man. I drove out to his place in Garner and loaded them into my truck and did not say much on the way home. Just drove. Danny and I spent that first Saturday in the workshop together. I showed him how to hold a hand plane, how to read the grain of the wood before you cut, how to check a surface for flat. He made a small shelf that came out lopsided on one end. It sits on the kitchen windowsill right now, and I am not moving it. There are days I still think about Nadine. Not with anger, mostly just a kind of sadness for what the relationship became and what it did not have to be. I raised her in that house. I thought I knew who she was. But here is what I know for certain. A man spends 40 years building something with his hands and his time and his money, and nobody gets to walk in and take it from him. Not a son-in-law with gambling debts. Not a daughter who decided her father was an obstacle instead of a person. If you're sitting on evidence and waiting for things to get better on their own, they will not. Document everything. Find the right attorney. Use the system that exists to protect you. You do not have to yell or threaten or make a scene. You just have to be prepared and patient and willing to follow through. I'm 67 years old. I get up every morning and make my coffee and sit in my chair by the front window. Danny is down the hall. The workshop is full again. Gloria's photo is on the mantle where it has always been. This house is mine. It always was.